to you guys. If some people would be willing to move up a little bit. I feel a need for closeness. Yeah.
I actually can see the pictures way better too.
Thank you. Hi. So, hello everybody. I'm Margaret Steele. I was friends and residents of the North Fork, and I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight and thank you for coming at such short notice. We were originally planning to hold this event in the latter part of May, but for reasons I'll describe in a minute, we had to scramble into overdrive and get ourselves organized for tonight. So I'm going to have to ask you to bear with us. We probably have a few ragged edges because we're not quite as prepared as we would want to be, so please bear with us. So our intent tonight is to share with you information that we've been collecting in terms of the proposed plans to do clear-cut logging in Lynch Creek North. And we want to describe to you what we believe is at stake if those plans go ahead. So we hope tonight that we can inspire you to become involved. We're just a small group of people, and we need a lot of help in order to protect Lynch Creek North from industrial logging. So in terms of format, I'm going to start just providing a little bit of an overview to talk about, to make sure that we all know where Lynch Creek North is, to describe what BCTS's plans are, and to outline our concerns. And then following that, Dieter and Elizabeth have put together a slideshow that will reveal the state of the intact, healthy forest ecosystem that is Lynch Creek North today. And they've also traveled further up the Granby Valley to take some shots of recent clear cuts. And what we'd like to reveal in that slideshow is what Lynch Creek North could potentially look like if BC Timber Sales plans to log go ahead. So thank you both for your hard work in putting that together. Following the slideshow, Roy Scheisser will speak. Roy's going to talk about the importance of protecting wildlife connectivity corridors. Roy's a naturalist, a long-term member and former president of the Granby Wilderness Society. Very, very knowledgeable about wildlife habitat and connectivity corridors. He's a long-term resident of the North Fork. Following Roy, Fred Marshall will speak. His topic is sustainable forests and long-term sustainable jobs. It's Fred Marshall. Just raise your hand. Fred's a registered professional forester, a professional agrologist, and certified arborist who lives in Midway on a woodlot which they've operated for over 30 years. And their woodlot is one of only 3 in BC that are FSC certified, and I forgot to ask what FSC stands for.
Forest Certification Council. They're a global certification body.
Thank you. Fred's the founding president of the Boundary Woodlot Association, and he's very passionate about creating and practicing sustainable forestry. So thank you both for being willing to speak. So following that, there'll be a discussion period. We'd like to have a conversation with you guys to see if you have some suggestions about what more we can do to try to raise awareness of what's at stake if BCTS's plans go ahead. We'll try to answer questions if we can. We'll basically just engage with you in a conversation. So that's the plan. We haven't actually done a run-through yet because of us being in overdrive, so I'm not exactly sure how long it'll take, but I suspect if I keep talking this fast, our presentations should be over within an hour, I would think. All right, so, okay. So everybody should have a handout. Maybe don't switch off the light
Yeah.
Not yet?
Not really.
On the back of your handout is a map that's been put together that also is up on the screen here. And so just to orient us, this is Gladstone Park. And to the north by the cursor there, that's just the southern tip of the Granby Park. Oh, that's okay. And so what the map reveals, all these different colors represent cut blocks that were logged in various different time periods. So when these parks were created in 1995, there was an intact wildlife connectivity corridor between the two parks. And what you can see now with logging, and with very recent logging, these purple ones were done in 2010 and 2012, that the connectivity corridor between these parks has been totally fragmented. And you can't see the whole of the Granby Park, but your map should reveal a little bit more than what we're seeing up here. And you can see that there's been clear-cut logging all around the park, basically creating the Granby Park as an island. And we're very concerned that if Lynch Creek North, which is, well, so this is the Lynch Creek North area here, it's the last intact forest between the high alpine areas in Gladstone, the low elevation south-facing slopes, and the Granby River, 3,200 hectares. And we're really concerned that if BC Timber Sales logging plans and roading plans go ahead, that this area too is going to be fragmented and there'll no longer be any connectivity between either of the parks and the river. Or I should say between this park and the river. There already is no connectivity between the two parks. So just to be clear, what we're describing as Lynch Creek North is the area bounded by Gladstone Park, Lynch Creek, the Granby River, and Cannon Creek. So for over a year, several people have been in conversation with BCTS, and they believe that there was an opportunity here to do timber harvesting differently. There was an opportunity to manage the forest for all values, and not just for timber harvesting values. By all values, I mean the values that a healthy forest ecosystem offers in terms of supporting biodiversity in the landscape, supporting wildlife habitat and migratory corridors, opportunities for recreation, hunting, fishing, clean water, air, protection against drought and climate change, as well as sustainable, selective timber harvesting. We weren't successful in our efforts to convince BCTS to take this approach. They're continuing with business as usual, clear cutting. BC Timber Sales has flagged 7 cut blocks in Lynch Creek North. There's 4 blocks in the area north of the river, and 3 blocks across the river right alongside the Granby. There's been no public meeting in regard to these plans. Under current legislation and policy, there's no requirement to advertise their plans in local papers or to hold a public meeting. We basically became aware of BC Timber Sales plans when we stumbled across the flagging when we were hiking in that area in September last year. A few of us raised a ruckus and were identified as stakeholders, and we were invited to submit comments on their plans, which we did. We asked BCTS to hold a public meeting, and they didn't want to, but they agreed to meet with a few of us. But they insisted that we bring only a few people. So there were 8 or 9 of us from the Friends and Residents of the North Fork that attended a meeting with BCTS at the end of February, along with 2 people from the Granby Wilderness Society, and also Vicki Husband, a well-known environmentalist who is acting as our advisor. So these are our concerns. There's already extreme fragmentation of the landscape due to road building and clear cutting. Granby Park, as I mentioned, has already become surrounded by clear cuts on all sides, and there's a danger that Gladstone will too if Lynch Creek is logged. Increased road access and clear cutting will threaten endangered wildlife populations, and Roy will address that specifically. There are old growth forests in close proximity to the boundaries of these cut lots. Will they be logged next? I'd really like to be clear that we don't want to see this positioned as an issue of environment versus jobs. We have friends and neighbors who work in the forest industry. We're just saying that industrial logging in this last intact forest is not the way to go. There is an opportunity, there was an opportunity, hopefully there still may be, to do it differently. So we've drawn a line in the sand. We basically said this is enough. Industrial logging is not sustainable. Our forests are not being managed for all values. They're being over-harvested, threatening wildlife. Come on. And this type of logging is not creating any long-term jobs. Fred will speak to that. So we're calling for a moratorium on road development and logging in Lynch Creek North. Specifically, we've asked for the following. We need to see all the outstanding wildlife and other values of the area examined and recognized, and the full cumulative impacts of logging in the last intact corridor for wildlife between Gladstone Park and the Granby River made known to the public. We sent that request to senior bureaucrats of the Ministry of Forest, Lands and Natural Resource Operations. Doug Conklin, the Deputy Minister, who has since resigned, not because of our request, I think, and also to Tom Jensen, the Assistant Deputy Minister, who's responsible for BC timber sales. That was on April the 6th. We haven't heard back, although I've been assured that Mr. Jensen will reply in the near future. In the meantime, the timber sales manager for our area has made the following statement to us. I do not see a need to defer the Lynch Creek area from timber harvesting, nor do I have an interest to delay the schedule for road upgrading and timber harvesting. So BCTS is proceeding with their plans. They're working right now on tender documents for road work, which will be put out to tender by mid-May. That's the reason we went into overdrive. Road work will begin in the summer, and the cut blocks will be put up for auction later this year or early next year. So we're appealing now to you, the public. Is this what you want? Is this the way you want your forests to be managed? We're appealing to you, please, to become informed and to take action. If there's 3 things we'd like you to take home tonight, they would be the following. 1, current forest policy and practices in BC are not taking into account all forest values. 2, industrial logging is not sustainable and is threatening wildlife populations. Specifically in this case, road upgrading will allow increased motorized access to the grizzly territory, and the grizzly is already threatened. 3, there was, and maybe still is, an opportunity to do things differently in Lynch Creek North. But we need your help. I hope that we can inspire you tonight to support our cause. So I'd like to turn it over to Elizabeth and Dieter, and hope you enjoy the slideshow.
Thank you.
So these red little dots are the cut blocks.
talking about. There's 4 on the north side of Lynch and 3 on the west side of the Granby. That's what is going to be put out for tender this year, and the road building will happen this in a couple of weeks if everything goes according to BCTS.
And that's
So he
also,
took pictures from this area here, as it is now. And then we took pictures of areas in here, as it is now, just to compare what is there right now and what will it look like in a little while from now. So this Grizzly, actually this Grizzly picture, which will come a couple more times. This Grizzly was, this picture, all the pictures are taken in Lynch Creek and a little further up north where we did the clear cut photos. But all the intact forests are all in those photos, and that Grizzly was taken in the Lynch Creek area as well. It's not taken from somewhere else. It's right in this area. This here is one of the cut blocks on the west side of the Granby. This area there, they're coming very close to the river. I would imagine they have a certain distance they will keep, but that will be exposed to wind and weather. So this is, the next few pictures are all of the West Granby cut blocks. Big cedars in there, little streams, small trees, big trees, old trees, young trees. It's a mixed forest, natural growth. I think it has been logged years back and has come back. And there's some bigger cedars in there. Just starting to poke out. Some spruce. Mixed. Standard spruce. Wetland areas, which I don't know how they approach that.
so this is in the proposed cut block, is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this is in the proposed, in one of them, yeah.
If it was within 50 meters of the river, then there's a reserve on that because that's a legal
That's right,
requirement.
yeah, 50 meters to the river. But nevertheless, even if they cut right 50 meters to the river, all these 50 meters will be very exposed to sunlight, drought, wind.
Flooding.
We could imagine what will happen with the rest of the 50 meters.
They are standing really close to the river, so that's why they never have been lost. That's why they are so big. But they will put it,
Exposed.
close, yeah.
Now we're going to the next cut block. This is actually the Lynch Bluffs in here. And there's this trail going up, hiking trail going up to the bluffs. There's hiking trails going this way. And the next block is right in here in this area here. So that'll be all clear cut in there.
Do you want to just make a quick mention about the bluffs too, Dieter?
The bluffs?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do that later, Angie, we just want to
Yeah.
focus on
Just
because
into the
the
logging
pictures
right
there.
now. That's a couple pictures of the trail towards the bluffs. It's the starting of the bluffs. Wildlife we have in that area. Oh.
These are
There's a few
pictures
winter
of
pictures.
Jenny in the winter.
Yeah, this winter, right in the bluff area. So we will see a few pictures of that. Deer.
There was a dead elk, and so we could record all the wildlife who actually passed by and ate from the elk. Maybe you want to say something, Jenny?
So this is all this winter. Big trees in that area, a lot of big ponderosa pines.
A couple hundred years old.
Oh.
This is about the 4 and 1.
What's that, teacher?
That's the cut blocks 4 and 1, so these are on that side of what I pointed out. The bluffs and a little further east.
Couple of one is actually the biggest one. It's pretty.
This is the trail of the forest. The bluffs. You can see actually here the flag. It's gotta be the road. So this is more open forest. It's a lot of ponderosa pine, Douglas fir, some lodge. Beautiful, beautiful forest. Very beautiful. Little streams and creeks down through. Runoffs. That's towards the bluffs, the trail towards the bluffs. Lots of wildflowers. Very intact system, actually. It's been logged before, but it's a long time ago. all ages of trees. This is the Grizzly family. They were taking, these pictures were taken in the Lynch Creek area as well. A little further east, but towards the last cut block, the east corner.
And below is the young one. Not to see, but he has a baby. She has a baby.
Are they coming down to the Granby to drink? Is that necessary for them?
It could well be. Go further down, across the Granby. This is more, this is the cut back one, this is a little further east.
Yeah, that's one of these giant ponderosa plants.
I think that's,
This pine there is the boundary, or one of the boundaries, so.
same tree.
So it's marked already.
Yeah, they're marked, yeah, that's, everything is marked, it's marked for road building and widening and padlock areas and,
So is it decided already?
oh yeah. Yeah, they want to commence with the road
So this
building
is just look at it how it used to.
in May. No, this is going to happen if we're not stopping.
Well, the election is on, we should have invited some more for the election.
Okay, well, actually, we missed the first part of the presentation where we're going to provide a bit of background, so maybe we can fill you in on it
Okay.
later.
That's the existing road, it's an old volume road, but it has grown in, really nice, which is leading to the Granby, to the Gladstone Park, to the lower Gladstone Park from Lynch Creek area. So this is actually the road they want to widen into a logging road, so they can drive in and out and pull out the logs. And this is how it's gonna look like afterwards. They said they're gonna widen it just a little bit up, but imagine with big logging trucks how a little bit it will be. Now this is a little further north on the Granby. You can see it, I can show on the map later on which area it is. It comes very close to private property. There's a field there's a homestead there. And it's a very similar situation to the Lynch by the habitat of the trees and the size of the trees and the growth. This shows the fragmentation.
It cuts all the way up into the alpines almost, and all the way up into the valleys and everywhere through.
What is not taken today is going to be taken in a few years. Steep hillsides, southern exposure. That has been taken out last year. This area. just been uprooted. And grown areas.
That's being planted right now, this week. It's being planted this week. That's where I think it is.
Why do they upend the stumps, do you know?
What's that?
Why do they upend the stumps? What is that, do you know?
That's the tree armillaria root disease.
Oh, okay, all right.
Tree that was what?
Remove the inoculum so it doesn't spread to the new trees.
How do you remove the inoculant from a dead tree?
Well, you take the tree out because that's where the,
Oh, you just
That's where the
expose
rot-
it to the air?
yeah.
All of those areas that you're showing here were mountain pine beetle stands that were affected by beetle. So if you had taken a picture of that same area 3 years ago, it all would have been red with dead trees.
Yeah. And there's it was a mixed stand though, nevertheless. But we can get into that a little later. We just want to show the impact. This is a little stream right in there, so they're protecting it with a little buffer, which is very, very narrow. And it's kind
I thought you
of,
said that was supposed to be 50 meters.
well, that is to the river, not the little stream.
Isn't it any waterway though?
What's that?
Isn't it any waterway? Isn't it supposed to
I'm not, Fred might know that better than me.
What was the question?
be?
Is it 50 meters everywhere or
No,
only on
no,
grass?
it depends on the size and class of stream
Yeah.
and water body, how far away the reserve.
This
has
is a
to be.
small one.
Okay.
This one actually doesn't require a reserve on, but
Okay.
one was left because it was, most of that block was lodgepole pine that had beetle in it.
Yeah.
And so any of the species, wherever were possible that weren't pine, were left behind.
Yeah.
And they tended to be in the riparian areas.
Yeah.
Should they just get pulled out and left?
Yeah.
Why aren't they harvested?
Stumps?
I mean, there's whole trees in here.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, but they're not really wasted by being pulled out and left. They do, that breaks down over the next 50 years and provides coarse woody debris to the soil.
Right.
So I wouldn't say they're wasted. In fact, there are requirements that have a certain amount of coarse woody debris.
Because
that's
they
behind
have
that
been
lawn.
reforested, replanted a couple of weeks ago, and this area. And we walked through it and we've seen lots of the trees being in there for 1 week, or not even a week, already dead. So they probably have to come in again and replant again. And I mean, with this dry weather now, I don't see much.
That's the large tree and it's dormant right now.
Well, I know, but a lot of them have red needles and have
No, I
no
think
needles
it's dormant.
anymore. They're not dormant anymore. So, these are just, some of them are dying back. And now we're going back to Lynch again. This is actually right adjacent to one of the cut blocks that has been harvested about 10 years ago, I would imagine. And this is how it's looking right now. That has been a mixed forest of larch and fir and pine and lodgepole pine, ponderosa pine. Now it's mainly ponderosa and lodgepole. There's hardly any fir at all in this whole campground. They just didn't make it. It was, the area is south facing and it becomes very, very hot. And the soil bakes up and dries up and heats up, and the pine is the only one surviving. So this is on the seedlings right from day one. There's a lot of stress on these trees, and I'm not surprised personally. That's my personal opinion. I'm not surprised that they're getting root rot or pine beetle because they're stressed throughout most of their life.
Beautiful to me.
Yeah, beautiful trees, but it's all the same size, it's all the same height, it's all the same age.
Monoculture.
And it's a monoculture, exactly. It's like a big potato field.
They're very prone to pine beetles because only pines left.
Anyway. That was our presentation, and Roy will talk about wildlife.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank Margaret. I have to smile for someone who kind of just got dumped into this. I was quite impressed with her knowledge of what's happening and just use of terms and about forestry. So I deeply thank her for that. And I was looking at that original map, and I just got to tell you what my daughter said earlier today. She was looking at the map, and she likes the color. So she said, Dad, what's the map about? And I said, well, it's about forestry, it's about logging and the colors they use. She said, they sure like to use a lot of color. I said, yeah, well, most of that green will disappear over the years if we don't do things differently. I realize there's probably some people here on, well, I know Doug's with Interfor, and sorry, I forget your name, it's Jamie, right? And is there anyone here from the ministry, or? No? Okay. So, I know Margaret said I'm knowledgeable on connectivity and wildlife. I mean, I have a little bit of knowledge on it. I'm a naturalist. I have spent a number of years with Granby and just have an interest in wildlife for my whole life. But to be really knowledgeable about it, I can't say that I am. I mean, there's guys that spend their whole lives trying to study connectivity and habits of wildlife, and in particular grizzly bears. Some years ago, I attended a conference in Idaho with childhood mentors, I guess you say, the Craigheads. I don't know if anybody, Doug probably does. I used to watch them as a kid. Anyways, I got to meet their sons. And it was a rather large conference on grizzly bears, and it had respected biologists from across North America. And we discussed the plight and the future of grizzly bears. I mean, I didn't, because I'm just really not, again, knowledgeable or as knowledgeable as those gentlemen were. And it was a lot of information and disturbing, because when I was there, and that goes back a few years ago now, it seemed to me unlikely that we were going to be able to achieve any kind of numbers and habitat protection that is required for large species like the grizzly bear. To the point where they say that within that wide-to-wide corridor, which goes from Yellowstone to the Yukon, if they don't maintain a number of 5,000 grizzly bears for a 1,000-year period, you need 5,000 bears in order to maintain a viable population for 1,000 years. And then you require 500 grizzly bears to maintain a population of over 100 years. And you have to have a population minimum of 100 bears to even conceive of beginning or maintaining any kind of population, and hopefully that population will begin to recover at 100 bears, 500 bears, and maybe eventually 5,000. But the likelihood of trying to do that is staggering because of, I would say, our biggest challenge is habitat, conserving habitat. We're losing it all the time, and we're losing it worldwide, never mind here in Canada, or the United States as well. I guess maybe rather than me just kind of speaking to you, and I apologize because my intentions were, I would have this all down pat and have something to say, but I'm back to full-time work painting again, still got paint on my fingernails. I get home at night and I'm pretty tired. So I went over some notes today and I tried to think about what I wanted to say and why, and why we're here today. And the main reason is because we're concerned about this 3,200 hectare parcel that when I first saw it on the map, I looked at it, it jumped out at me because it's intact, it's roadless. And if you look around both of the parks, most of that's gone. There used to be what's called special management zones, which would allow for industrial activity, recreation, and kind of security zones for grizzly bear as well outside the parks. Well, they virtually disappeared. So this little clump kind of stood out, and I wondered why it was still there. And I think part of the reason it's still there is because it was rather inaccessible and timber prices were low. It wasn't viable to go in there. Timber prices are climbing. It's more likely that we're going to go into those areas because the return is going to be better. Now, BCTS said they have no intentions at this time to go into that area, but again, I think it'll probably depend on timber prices. And one of the biggest things that I've been told, and this sort of comes from BCTS too, that the annual allowable cut within the boundary is 300,000 cubic meters for BCTS. And they kind of, and maybe you can kind of extrapolate that from the map, used up a lot of what is within the operating area. There's less land to extract the timber from. So we're going into places where we wouldn't have gone into before because we don't have enough. And I understand that. And one of the problems that allows for that is the legislation in the province. And if anything is going to change with regards to wildlife, I think it has to be legislation from within the province that dictates to lumber companies that, okay, this is how we're going to do things. Now we're going to do it differently than the way we've done it before. But right now, it's still the way we've been doing it for a long time. So inevitably or eventually, it has to go to that higher level. And foresters, in this case, because we're dealing with forestry, they will need a broader set of tools so that they can implement better, I should have a glass of water, better wildlife management practices. And hopefully that will allow us to maintain healthier populations of grizzly bear, mountain goat. I've been here 17 years and I understand in the early 50s there was a robust population of mountain goat up in the North Fork areas. Unfortunately, the ministry opened up the season and they were virtually shot out. There's a small number of goat left, but like grizzly bear, they need good quality habitat. And they're a sensitive animal, like grizzly bears. They don't like a lot of human contact. They don't like roads because roads bring in people. And with access, you disturb animals, so they move out of what may be viable, good, productive habitat to less productive habitat, and habitat that may be more susceptible to road and to access. So what happens is you get mortality for grizzly bear, mortality for goat, and mortality for deer. And I don't know how many people here are aware of the fact that we also have a problem with our deer population. So they've gone from 2,000-3,000 level. Barry, how long ago did we have those kinds of numbers of mule deer?
1986, on a deer count that's recorded on Freedom of Information Letter, Ministry of Environment counted 962 deer on Gilpin. They extrapolated and said, with using their siteability index, they believe for every deer they counted, they missed one. So on Gilpin, in the spring of '86, they believed they had 1,100 white-tailed, 900 mule deer. And of course, that's not including the North Fork. In just one small watershed, many, many years ago, Howard and Gordon Bryant, who you knew are now both gone, told me that between Glover Creek and Fresh Creek, which is just above your place, they both counted 232 deer. So that was probably in the 40s, just a microcosm. And if you extrapolated that, all those different watersheds up the North Fork, Gilpin, Christina Lake, this gives you an idea. In other words, if you put all of this on a graph, what's happened to the deer, truly, it's from the upper left, down near the bottom on the lower right. You do the same with the forest too.
I've been, like I said, I lived up the North Fork. I've been there for 17 years. When I first moved there, there was a small population of mule deer on that slope that the Bryans talked about where they would see perhaps 250 animals. I counted 40, and in the last 4 years, I haven't seen one. So they're going, I guess, they're declining in numbers. Whether they're going or not, I couldn't say. But what all that means is that there's something that's happening and we're losing wildlife numbers. And a little while ago I was listening to CBC and they were talking about sustainability within the forest industry. And they used the words renewable and sustainability. And I agree with what they're saying. It's probably a renewable. It is renewable and could possibly be a sustainable resource. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's also being managed in a way that is good for other values. And in this case, I speak to wildlife values. So that's something that's missing when we talk about sustainability and a renewable resource. I can sometimes go off in all kinds of different directions, so please feel free to stop me. If you have a question or if you have a comment, I don't mind. Maybe spur something, another thought, and I can explain it. But back to connectivity. That conference that I attended in Idaho with the Craigheads, they mapped out, and part of it was the Y2Y corridor, and how connectivity would look like from Yukon all the way down to the United States. And it's a very intensive plan involving private land ownership and the purchase of land so that they can create this walkway, more or less, for large ungulates, and that wouldn't include wolves as well and cougars. They tagged one grizzly bear, and that one female grizzly bear would move 5 to 6 kilometers on a daily basis. So it also says that these large carnivores need a tremendous amount of area in order to survive. A male grizzly bear, now this will also depend on where it's from, but on the coast it might have a territory of, I think it's 300 square kilometers. And then if you move to the interior plateau of British Columbia, that could escalate to 600 square kilometers. Part of that is social dynamics. Bears, especially males, will include female ranges, so they'll move from one female to the other. With females, the ranges are usually smaller, and in here it's averaged out to about 200 square kilometers. And their territory is more based on food availability and security. And security is another big issue. Grizzly bears don't particularly like roads. Females sometimes, as I understand it, will spend more time closer to a road with their cubs because males don't like roads. So there's some thinking on their part with regards to that. But still, they would rather not have them. They'd rather see larger intact areas with security areas and food availability. And food availability is also an issue here. On the coast, you have a much more abundant food supply. I was talking to one of the senior biologists in Victoria, and we were discussing the issue of high biodiversity and medium and lower biodiversity. And that simply means, in terms of the coastal environment, you have much a much greater variety of food, more concentrated, so it's a higher emphasis. Here we have a lower emphasis because basically the bears have to move out in a large area to find the food supply that they require. And he said that, you're right, Roy, perhaps our classification of biodiversity emphasis might be a bit skewed, because in your area, what I would consider low biodiversity might be high biodiversity because of the fact that there is a limited supply of that one specific food resource. So the science isn't exact, they're still working on a lot of it. But from my point of view, I often see it in a much simpler terms. And with regards to this particular area, and I've discussed this with BCTS, 15 years ago, I was sitting down with two gentlemen from Hope and Talbot, and we were discussing the issue of connectivity between the Granby and the Gladstone Park for 2 hours. And I simply said, listen, in order for us to maintain bears, we need this connectivity between the parks. And that time, we were also, or I was also in discussion with some of those biologists down across the border, and they agreed that in order for the bears to go from up, down into the United States, this is what's required. And males especially, not only do they kind of need a little walkway, but they need a broad area in order to feel comfortable enough to move from point A to B. In my mind, that section of land that was between the Granby and Gladstone didn't seem like a lot of land to give up, but it was like, no way, that's it, done. And I kind of stressed the fact that, well, if we don't maintain that, we're going to start to lose the bears. And when you get to that point where you have below 100 bears, and you really don't know how many bears we have in this area right now, I understand there will be a study on that. The biologists in the south would consider it extirpated, it's gone, even though you might have still 50 bears remaining. So you need that 100 bears. And to have those 100 bears, you also need the right criteria, and part of that criteria is to have connectivity. So here we are again, 15 years later, but this time we're talking about 3,200 hectares, a little pocket. That's not really a north-south corridor, it's more of an elevation corridor, but nonetheless, it's a piece of intact habitat. And what's also important about it is that it is adjacent to one of the parks. There was a biologist that the Granby Wilderness Society hired in late 90s, early 2000s. And one of his recommendations was at the time that we need to protect more of the area around the parks. He said right now, and Margaret mentioned this earlier, we're creating this island theme, and which has been talked about a lot, and Yellowstone has always been considered an island of extinction. And the bears in Yellowstone have done reasonably well, but they're moving out of the park. But as soon as they do that, they're susceptible to interact with humans, and they get killed. So that population is an island, and it's hard to say how long that they will last. And they can only last depending, their population could only expand to a certain level because bears, again, males, females, need these large territories. So when you do the math, you have this much area. Well, you can figure out pretty close how many bears you can have in that area. Coming back to that point where we're asking now, all right, here's this little 3,200 hectares. We'd like to see it protected. We'd like to see it remain as intact, roadless area adjacent to the park. And the response is, no, we're not going to do it. And it's like I kind of shake my head and go, is it that necessary for us to go in there to take that habitat out when we know, when the science knows, when the government knows? There was in 2002, and I was sitting in on one meeting where there was going to be a recovery strategy. They talked about a recovery strategy for the Kettle Granby grizzly population, and it's blue listed, it is considered threatened. And a lot of money went into that study, and all of a sudden it just kind of dropped. And the word recovery was taken out of it because I was told that if we put the word recovery in there, that means we actually have to do something about it. And this way now it sort of just ended up as a strategy, but it's not one that's implemented. And I understand it's really difficult to put these strategies together because there are a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders involved, and there's one in the Cascades, the North Cascades, that has acquired the title of a recovery strategy, but it took years in the making and a lot of fighting between stakeholders. So it's a difficult task, but I think that in smaller cases like this one, it shouldn't be that difficult. And we should be able to say, and here's the other thing. Sometimes you're told, and we were initially told by DCTS that, well, what you're asking for is something we can't do. That has to go to legislation. It has to go to a higher level. And they have to come back to us to say, well, okay, maybe we can do this differently, and maybe you can look at your plans again, and perhaps we can leave that out. Well, that's not exactly true either. The local British Columbia Timber Sales Office and the manager of that office has the authority to make those changes. It's up to him to decide whether he's going to take the timber out of that particular area or he's going to look for it somewhere else. In this case, he's just decided he's not going to do it. And I think it's wrong. What else can I say?
They have a quota, don't they, for how much timber they want to take out? And I've heard that just sort of, like, is there some way that we could reduce the amount that is allowable?
As a matter of fact, Margaret pulled this out of a text that I can't remember where it came from, but we have it. And it was in, where is Margaret? Here. It was in 2000, right? Where the chief forester was asking whether he should review the annual allowable cut in there for this area based on this Kettle Granby grizzly bear strategy. And he never had a response. So he was entertaining that idea, or he was asking for input on that, but somehow it wasn't addressed. So I'm assuming that yes, it could be done.
Is the public allowed to weigh in on that? Like if it was a newspaper article and you could have like a vote on it in our area, is that something you could do?
Yeah. Fred,
I didn't quite hear the question.
Is it possible for the public to weigh in on the annual allowable cut?
Oh, certainly. There's actually two opportunities for public review. They put out a technical report, which is open for public review, and then there's that goes back in for a socioeconomic analysis, and then that's combined with another report, which is again available for public review. Generally 60-day public review.
And where would it be when it's a public review? Where would they have to inform the public? Where would we find it?
Oh, it's advertised in the local newspapers.
So the Gazette and the Sentinel Online perhaps should have it for sure. And do they have to do it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, it's mandatory. Chief Forester is bound by law to have 2 public reviews for the TSR.
And it wouldn't be an article, it would be in the classifieds area, would it? As a
Good
notice?
question. I'm not sure. Probably in the classified legal section.
Could I just maybe ask, I don't know if the representatives here from Interfor know, but my understanding was that the chief forester has already started the process for reviewing the allowable cut, and the time for public input is ended. Do you guys know about that, or does anyone know
No,
about
we
that?
would know about it. No, the boundary, by law, every 5 years,
Right.
unless the chief forester decides to extend it or shorten it. And in the boundary, the last 3 TSR reviews have kind of kept the cut even though we had 2 new parks in.
Right.
And so we've got a pretty robust forest here, some mountain pine beetle, but lots of other species. And so we may not be done for another few, or ready for another few years. I'm not sure, because the government has higher priorities up north than down here. So exactly where we are in the queue, I'm not sure. But therefore, all private forest companies are bound to do their tree farm every 5 years. And well, you can maybe see over the status of Interfor is in here. I'm not sure where you are in your 5-year TSR review.
Do we want to, I'm not sure, do we want to get into that, or maybe, I'm just looking at the watch that got below me, and I'm trying to adjust to a 24-hour clock, so it's just after 8. And I'm just wondering, we've got one more speaker, or one, can you maybe wrap up?
Oh, sure. Did anybody have any questions?
just one question.
Yeah.
Is it, you're concerned the logging or the road access or both?
Well, let me put it this way. Road access would probably be one of the primary factors for grizzly bear mortality. And logging, the result of logging on grizzly bears is fragmentation, alienation, and habitat loss. And the way I see it, and going back to that brief discussion I had with the biologist in Victoria, because the food availability within this area is limited, and fragmentation and habitat loss and alienation, those three combined as a result of logging pushes bears into areas where they perhaps wouldn't go otherwise in search of habitat, security areas, denning areas, and food availability.
Right, let me just make a comment here, you know. This is all about politics. This is the right agenda of the BC Liberals. They have no respect for parks. Now, unlike most of you, I have been there, I've talked to these people, I've argued with them, even had a pretty good relationship with the Supreme. But there is no respect for parks. What they've done to wildlife range is the same blueprint. If you do any Christian due diligence, you'll find out their first order of business since '05 was to accommodate what the rancher wanted, what the hunter wanted, what the timber companies needed. There's no rules. There are no regulations. And if you get an NDP government, there is some hope that they would look at this. But the province is broke. So we got a little bit of hope with the NDP. They created the parks. And I can tell you, if had you been at this core process, the Commission on Resources and Environment, you would have seen no end of the wailing and gnashing of teeth by big business interests. So, I mean, the fact that we are where we are is not surprising. And if you get another BC Liberal government, well, God darn it, who knows? Maybe we'll be in the parks. You gotta pray that the NDP, because they created these parks, will cut us some slack. We're broke. We cost, what, 1,000 board feet of lumber is what? Then $400 or a bit below that. Some predict it can even hit 600. So, you know, great being what it is. But I tell you, I don't know if Dave Tellerico knew what he was doing when he went down and connected with Vicky Husband, because that is their best hope. She is well connected with at least 4 MLAs in the NDP that will all probably be in the cabinet. And I spoke to 3 of them personally, so you've got the best connection you can possibly get. If they win, and if Adrian Dix believes he's going to cut us any slack. But the rest of us, we're just pounding sand, right, frankly.
Okay, thanks, Barry. Maybe just would you mind?
Wrapping up?
Yes.
Oh, sure.
Wrap
Yeah,
up and then-
yeah, wrap up. No, I do want to say one thing, though. There are a lot of people within the ministries that are doing a lot of hard work to try and come up with solutions. And there are different orders, like there's what's called the Government Action Regulations. They're called GAR orders, that all foresters must abide by and follow. But as I said earlier, they fall short. And this is not me saying this. This is some of those biologists, the grizzly bear biologists in North America that are saying this. A lot of these regulations just fall short of what's needed to maintain those numbers that I talked about, to have a population of grizzly bears into the future. So, I just wanted to let people know that there is some work and there's some good people doing that. So thanks.
Something, the one thing that I can see from all of this, and from many other meetings I've had around the world.
Pardon?
From many other meetings I've had around the world, and I've been in 126 countries for the last 8 years. They all have the same problem. It's all economics. Politics are controlled by economics. The corporations, Corporation of Canada, Corporation of the United States, Corporation of Great Britain, they're corporations, they're required by law to pay their stakeholders, stockholders, stakeholders, whatever. And if they don't have more money each year and they can't grow, then they'll take it out on you. They'll take it out of you. They don't care how many of you they kill, and how many animals they kill, as long as they make money for their sponsors. They don't care.
Thank you. So, yes, Fred Marshall.
Thank you. Good evening. Why don't you all stand up for just a second? You've been sitting for over an hour. I am almost getting tired. I just have a little stretch.
Yes, thank you.
Pretty intense there too, eh?
Yeah. And I'm not going to be happy to try and hair that.
Anyhow, so if you want to grab a seat now, then.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Anyhow, my friend, and I always like to respond to questions, but maybe, so whatever works for you. Anyhow, forestry is my passion, and my dream is always to live in the bush in a little log cabin with my dad. And in fact, I live in an old farmhouse in the bush with my wife. Probably a little youngster's dreams mature. And I love it. I live at the end of the power line, and road goes by our house, but it ends just above our house. And the one neighbor is a mile away, and I can't see him. And I don't have any grizzly bears in our yard, but we've got all kinds of other bears. Anyhow, it's interesting tonight. You've obviously heard some heartfelt feelings from some people who live here and love the land. And to see something happening in their backyard is pretty scary, pretty disturbing. And how many times have you heard that? Those people that just have the NIMBY syndrome, not in my backyard, until it happens in your backyard. Oh, wow. Man. So it's pretty disturbing. And I've been in their backyards and been here in the boundary for over land for 45 years or so. And obviously I love it. Wouldn't rather live anywhere else in the world. And Jimmy here was born in the boundary, and he's still here and pretty happy. And his favorite place is being in the bush too. He lives in the city for now, though, and of course, rural. Anyhow, so we have a forest company here. I sell logs. I like to make money. That's my woodlot. And I live in a wooden house. Most of us do. So we have to cut down wooden trees. So where do we do it? Somebody else's backyard? Always a dilemma, isn't it? And if you're going to cut down trees, the main thing is where do you do it and how do you do it so that we can protect all the values out there, the water, the air, the wildlife, the recreation, the aesthetics, the peace and quiet, everything else that we enjoy. And it's always a balance, and finding that balance is a real challenge everywhere in the world, not only here in the boundary. So this dilemma that these people have and say, hey, we are concerned, we think the boundary is a little inappropriate in this area, and they've given some darn good reasons why. And they've asked for your help. They've asked for my help, and I'm happy to help them. I believe in their cause. And I say I have a woodlot, but I live in a wooden house too. So we have to cut down wooden trees. So where do we draw that line? Where's that compromise? And that's the struggle that we all work with. Some people think we've crossed it in some areas, and some people think we've got a little ways to go yet. Oh, man, it is a complex thing, and we meet those things every day. Life is a series of compromises, except you don't need to compromise your principles. So how did they compromise? Well, I've been asked, not necessarily to speak directly to this issue, because, but about how do we get sustainable resource management? Well, what does it mean? It means managing, my definition, our natural resources in a manner that does not diminish the capacity or capability of the land to produce those resources ad infinitum, forever. Okay? Pretty simple, but that's what we mean. Can we have grizzly bears forever? That's what sustainable resource management means, and timber for our houses and our kids. Fishes, clean water. On the Kettle River Watershed Committee, Doug sits there with me too, and we got challenges too. All kinds of pressure on the water. So, that's an interesting and I think a true philosophical concept. That's what sustainable management is. And who is against sustainable management? Nobody. Everybody. Well, I think everybody wants sustainable management. So it's easy in concept.
Different people might understand it differently.
That's true. That's exactly right. True in concept, but difficult to achieve in practice, and that's why we're here having this meeting tonight. But we need to put it in perspective too. I want to talk about some broader issues here, but brings it right home here. Is Barry mentioned it there. Money, big thing, and we're broke. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But we live in one of the richest countries in the world. We are ranked, which number? I'll give you between 1 and 3 by the World Bank, based on natural resources and income per person per capita. Canada is ranked where in the world? Top 3, which one? 1, 2, or 3? You got 33% chance of getting it. Number 2. Very good. Yes, number 2, only behind New Zealand. So they have relatively low population and pretty rich in resources. Okay, so which province in which one of the where does BC rank in Canada for being one of the richest provinces? Again, I think in the top 3. Pretty darn close. 1 or 2. Okay, which one is the most biodiverse, hands down? British Columbia. All the other provinces combined don't match BC's biodiversity. Okay, so if we are one of the richest provinces, and one of the richest countries in the world, man, if we can't practice sustainable resource management, who can? Right? Because we're not poor. We got more food than we need every day. Lots of other stuff. So other countries in the world, I can see maybe, down in southern Hamilton, they're clear cutting and burning and everything else, and sometimes we do the same up here, and maybe we shouldn't do quite so much. Clear cutting, nothing wrong with clear cutting. Okay? Right place, right time, and the best way to do it for all kinds of reasons, like root rots, diseases, wind throw, age, etc. Anyhow, how do we reach sustainable resource management in British Columbia? And I was asked here, you said there's going to be somebody here taking pictures and recording it. Can you put it on the TV? I said, put it anywhere you want. I've sent all of these things to us twice, to all the politicians, to Adrian Dix, and to Christy Clark, and anybody will listen. And Margaret, etc. Called the 3 Fs, Fred's Forest Philosophy. And I was just thinking here too, Roy got a little bit thirsty, so I asked for a glass of water, and he got it just like that. I'm not done yet. I'll say one more thing. I drink Southern Comfort. Probably not going to bring me any. Anyhow, so it's a big issue, and all of these are election issues, but they're also issues that you and I live with each day. So, okay, why is it that we can't? Why are we struggling in British Columbia to manage sustainably? When we are the richest province, one of the richest provinces in Canada, have more biodiversity, more wildlife, one of the lowest populations per capita on Earth for area of land, the most fresh drinking water in the world, and we're struggling managing sustainably right here in the boundary. Why is that? And we've got one of the most unique areas in the province right here in the boundary. There's kind of the 3 top places I would like to live in the boundary, the boundary, the boundary. And that's why you people are here. And we all care about it. Right? We all care passionately about it. So some of the issues that are constraining us, number 1 is we're debt. We are broke. We cannot live within our means. And how many countries in the world have you heard about on the radio lately? Greece, Italy, Portugal, Libya,
Cyprus.
the U.S., and Cyprus, thank you, yes. And they all say, well, you guys, now you're broke, you haven't been paying your taxes, and we've lent you enough money, so now we're going to lend you some more to get you out of debt. I never figure how that possible is to drive people into more debt to get them out of debt.
That's how they do it. They lend their money first, and more, then they can pay, and they spend it. And then they hold them by the check.
Now that is exactly my point, because then you would lose all of your freedom. All of your freedom. You are no longer independent to do what you do. And those companies have lost their national, international sovereignty. Because somebody else, the World Bank, the big banks, tell them what you will do. And Greek says, no, we're not going to do it. They says, yes, you will. And indeed, now they are doing it. Because then launches, we don't want that to happen in British Columbia. But every government of all stripes have gone like this for the provincial debt. And the last picture I saw, just let me speak for a 2 seconds, comes just like that, and I have to take their word for it, although I have no reason to believe it or disbelieve it. And then because of hidden debt, the recent government has gone like that. Again, you have to talk to the experts. I just tell you what I read. Anyhow, debt is crippling, and we need to balance our budget. How much longer can we in British Columbia keep going into debt before we go bankrupt? I don't know. Nobody knows. But it certainly constrains the freedoms that we have to manage on grizzly bear recovery studies. I was listening to the public forum and the politicians were here. People are hearing about health care, about diabetes, about their kids, about schools, about education, about our streets, about our highways, about our police force and everything. All those things cost money. But if you're broke, then guess what? A large portion of your money goes to do? Pay down your debt, to stay out of jail. Yet we keep increasing our debt. Anyhow, that is one challenge to our resource management, a huge one to our resource management. And I'll get to that in a minute here, because in fact I can maybe jump to that. BC Timber Sales here is a business. There's a business arm, independent entity within the Ministry of Forests. And they have got marching orders from Victoria to cut timber. Why do they give them that mandate to cut timber? To
Pay the debt.
make money. Thank you. Make money. Right. And and they are given a land base, and they are given a cut, and they are told, cut the cut, deliver us the money, and indeed they do that. And times have been tough, and so some of the tougher portions of timber have not been economical for the present thing, so they went to the easier to cut timber. Lynch Creek happens to be next handiest one, instead of some of the steeper and more remote, but that's pretty close to town here. Right? So it's worth a little bit more money, so they can afford to operate there. So could they go elsewhere? Certainly they could. I mean, that's not their last area of land within their THLB is called Timber Harvesting Land Base, but that's where they decided, they make money on it, it's convenient, and indeed, sometime they will have to log it unless we make other changes, which is what you people are trying to do. And that again is how that is above your level. Anyhow, that is number one. A new Water State Sustainability Act. Wow. I don't know about you, but I've asked my students and people that I teach to rank the priority resource. What's just number one in the 1800s? And it was fur. Beavers, right? Beaver pelts, buffalo, ermine, mink, sea otter, like gold. And then what came second after the fur? Then the prospectors came. First was the mountain men, then the prospectors, then the agriculturalists, and then the foresters to cut down trees and work so they could turn into railroad ties and get the railroads here to build buildings, etc., etc. Water was used for power. 2005, forestry was king. What's going to be number one in 2020? 7 short years from now. I guarantee you it will be water. 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 We need a new Water Sustainability Act in BC. Because right now, we are one of the only jurisdictions in the world that doesn't license groundwater. And with new drilling technology, even though Doug may live, figuratively speaking, ways from me, I can drill here, and if I have a well driller who's willing to do what I tell him for where I pay him, I can drill under his land and get the water. And you would never know it. Got technology to do that these days. We need to have a Water Sustainability Act to protect our water. And I have to say, the Liberal government came that close to passing it, and then it fell off the books, kind of like other things in this fall off the books. So we need to get back on the books and support whichever government will deliver us a Water Sustainability Act. And a couple of just interesting things about water, if we don't control. Right now, we don't have very good control over our water. Whoever controls water controls the world. And some countries have privatized their water. And you know what they did 2 or 3 years later? They overthrew the government, overthrew the water company and kicked them out because they were charging water that poor people couldn't afford. Never privatize your water. Never let anybody, always keep that in your crown corporation, or your crown hands, in the hands of the people of BC.
So that's interesting. So advancing that, maybe you should never privatize your timber either.
Never privatize your timber?
Yeah.
You're 100% on that one too. We also have, again, Liberals came up with a new idea, BC's zero net deforestation policy, which means we have 60 million hectares of forest in BC now. We're going to have that for how long? Forever and ever. Sustainable. Great. Great policy. They got 17 pages from Fred on it. Guess what happened to this policy now? It's died. It's like the Water Sustainability Act died. Yeah, we need to get that back up on top, right? Maintain those forests, maintain the wildlife, maintain the water, and all those other values we have. Number 3, we have the Roads Resource Act to limit how many roads we have, classify them, because we've got 500,000 paved roads, we think probably more, of resource roads, that's not the highways. And they're kind of in no man's land. Who maintains them? Who's responsible for them? And it's a huge complex system. And then the forestry people are bound by FERPA, and they do a huge amount of work on laying out roads. And then they go out there, and the next day, figuratively speaking, there's a 4-lane highway going right across their cut lots, built by a mining company. They never even talked to them about it. And that happens today. Yeah, whoa, is that sustainable? No, so we need a Road Resource Act to bring that under control. And I think my dissertation is only 15 pages on that. Natural resource officer. We just had a new change in the act here that affected our compliance and enforcement officers, of which 2 work here in Grand Forks. I think there's only 2 here, is that right? 2 CD officers here in Grand Forks for the Ministry of Forests. Then we have a CO officer also. Okay. Anyhow, there was a new Natural Resource Act just came out and broadened their powers, and now we call them Natural Resource Officers. And it broadened them to help Dave Webster out, the CO here, so they could look after the Water Act, the Fish and Wildlife Act, the Forest Act, FERPA, which they already looked after, and on and on. So about 6 or 7 other acts that they could look after. Guess which act they can't touch? Specifically included, I gave you a hint, the Mining Act. Can't touch it. What? And I see right here in the boundary, miners out there prospecting, going straight down the hillside, right through a plantation, and I have small-scale salvage loggers, or interfor operators, or anybody. If we did that, we would have a real neat benefit. Free meals for about 2 weeks. Right? We would. And here's the miners there. Sorry? And I begged the CD officer, now an NRO, to go out there and look at it. It's really nothing I can do. Not under my jurisdiction. So we need to bring that act. Because how about this principle for sustainability? The rules of the bush should apply to everyone who operates out there the same. That fair? Well, I have to maintain a stream buffer and build a road and reforest and can't drive through plantations, and everybody should be bound by that. Not just me because I'm in the booze business, but somebody in the mining business can do whatever they want. So we have to change that to get our problems under sustainability. We need ORV legislation. 8 years, 9 years, we've been working on that. All the players are on side, government's on side, and guess what? Dropped off the books.
ORV?
ORV, off-road vehicles, legislation, ATVs, snowmobiles, motorbikes, everything, horses don't count. So why not? All the players are on side. Why? Only one reason I can think of, and that's just my thought, I could be wrong, is because there's 4 or 5 or 6 huge companies that are that manufacture these ATVs, and they tell the government, drop that. So we get it, and then we will pay you to get reelected. I don't know, but you tell me if that's not the reason. I can't think of a reason. I mean, if everybody's on side, why wouldn't the government pass that? IPPs, that's called an independent power project. Nice idea in theory, but man, a lot of those things are in back, pristine, wild areas, and they dam up a river, divert it, put it through a pipe, and initially that maybe is not such a big impact, but when you have to build 200 or 300 kilometers of power line to get power to somewhere else, and roads to service all that, then your impact goes on and on and on and on and on, right? And roads are a big issue. And see, IPP's in the right place at the right time, good. Like we had one at Boundary Falls years ago, and the dam was already there, and it was right on the power grid, and it served Boundary Falls as Greenwood. Pretty good deal in those days. Since gone into disrepute, I think the city of Retallick still has their water wheel turning, which is a mining town. But the big issue with IPPs is they issue water licenses to whom? To private industry, who may be owned in the U.S. or Australia, who knows where they're owned, and guess whose water right those used to be? Used to be ours. For 40-year terms, they say it's not very long. 40 years, that's a lifetime. It's a lifetime. Wow, it's gone. And guess what? We've already lost the rights to the IPP here on the Kettle River. The company's never built it yet, and they just ran out of their permit, but they just got an automatic, it wasn't automatic, it was a political extension on it for another 3 or 4 years to prove up on it. You have to tell the government, like those things, especially here, yeah, this is in our front yard, right, for everybody. Species at risk act for BC, we've got identified wildlife management strategy. We have the Wildlife Act, which we just amended, really meaning to keep out foreign animals. And we have the Federal Species at Risk Act. Okay, but that has some effect on BC, not a lot, some. We are one of these, there are 8 other provinces, and most of the US states have Species at Risk Act. We don't. Okay, so we probably, and there's about 1,300 species of over 3,000 that are going downhill and are on the endangered or threatened list. Okay, because obviously what we have is not quite good enough yet to manage sustainably. So we need another piece of legislation to allow there.
There is a species at risk act.
Sorry?
There is a species at risk.
That's the federal one. We don't have a provincial one. Yeah, thanks. I meant provincial. Say there are 8 other provinces do have provincial ones. We don't, and there is a special. This is the Federal Species at Risk Act, which basically has a limited number of wildlife that it can address. Protected areas in BC, my opinion, shared by lots of other people, needs to be expanded. We have about 12% here in the boundary. Okay? Scientific studies now have shown that in order for an ecosystem to be sustainable and to function in a healthy manner, you need to set aside at least 40 to 75%, not 12. Okay? Lots of science to back that up now. Lots of science. 40 to 75% minimum. Okay? Do we have enough of the boundary? 12? Well, maybe not. And that is where we need a higher level to set that, right? Because that was set years ago under the core, as Barry mentioned there, where we ended up with about 12% here in the boundary. Ended up with about 12% in BC, which has now crept up to about 14.5 about. And again, it's interesting. I think, let me get a little philosophical statement, and I take too much of your time, but I think that the richest countries in the world who have the most resources have a higher obligation than the poorest countries and those that don't to protect more. And if you believe that philosophically, then the United Nations actually backs that up with their principle on human dignity. In BC, maybe across Canada, 12% might be right. I don't think so, probably so 40 or 50%. Actually, we have set aside a goal now, agreed on, to save 50% of the boreal forest, which is probably a minimum. But here's the principle. How much of Saskatchewan do you think should be saved? I think 10% we probably have enough. In BC, though, which we're more diverse and more varied than all the rest of Canada put together, maybe we should save a little more than 12%, because we've got so much more variety here. Let me give you an example. Across Canada, we've got these all different neat ecosystems. In BC, we have the alpine ecosystem, not the only province that has it. Alpine. What percentage of the alpine ecosystem in Canada is in BC, approximately? Anybody?
50%.
50? Anybody else?
70, 80.
80. 80. 95. So maybe we should save more than 12%. Maybe we should save all of it, right? We put it on a Canadian basis. Wow, if that's all we got in BC, let's save it all in British Columbia.
Could you define alpine?
Alpine, probably anything that doesn't support timber.
So how much is currently,
Sorry?
how much is currently protected right now?
I don't know what percentage, probably a fairly high percentage now, I think.
But even the stuff that's not protected, how much of it is being utilized? Or in an industrial application, it's probably a pretty small number.
I agree. Certainly a small number. However, there's other uses other than industry, like ORVs, hunting, people, TV tours, hiking tours, guided outfitters, all those kind of things all have an impact on those things, right? And we used to have what we call de facto wilderness area in BC years ago. We said, well, that's an area that's so big, it's really wilderness. And I said, there's no such thing. And now we realize there is no such thing, because we go everywhere now with our modern technology and planes and leisure and equipment, etc. Okay, so we need an enhanced protected area, and in order to achieve that, the next thing we need is an updated land use strategy, not only for the boundary, but for all of BC. Our land use plan is over 20 years old, gave us some good ideas at the time, said here's the park, Gladstone and Granby, that there will be buffers around them, which have since disappeared, as we've heard and seen on the maps there. And now we have a new area down low, and this connectivity corridor, maybe we do need that. Maybe we do need another look at our protected area in the boundary and British Columbia, right? Why not have another look? That's all we're asking. And not only that, but the Forest Practices Board did an audit of the government's resource use policies in British Columbia. And they said, you guys have set no goals, no strategies to direct your staff to reach for. Like, what is your new protected area strategy? How much timber do you want to cut? Do you want to cut 700 million cubic meters? Then tell us. You want to graze produce 920,000 AUMs of cattle? So many recreation user days? You want to clean drinking water? What do you want? Set some goals and objectives for the province of British Columbia. And the Forest Ranger was scathing criticism of the government because the government didn't want to do that. So it's just go. Why are we doing that? Go anywhere. Okay? And there's the Ombudsman and the Auditor General have issued less, way less. Actually, they were also scathing reports of the government's management of our natural resources. Well, how long can we do that sustainably? We can't. So we've got to change. So we need a new land use strategy. But we need to engage in those LRMPs, roundtables, again, to update our plans and bring them into modern day. Okay? Combined with these other things, we need a new Water Act, we need a Kettle River Watershed Plan, we need a protected area strategy for BC. Because, yeah, you guys can fight your battle here and you might win it, but then the people next door are going to do the same thing over and over again because the government has not set a goal. What do we want for protected area BC? Is it 12%? Well, then we stop right now. We want to cut 100 million cubic meters of timber? I'm not saying that's wrong. Well, then let's go for it. But let's all engage, as somebody said here, can we have a say in that? Well, that's what these LRMPs are there for, so the people have a say. And that is where the stakeholders were involved. It was a good process that was initiated by the NDP over 20 years ago, called the core process. Very sad thing, I tell you that was a painful process. But it was a good one, because people had a say. Right?
So, Fred, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
I'm just about done. I got an even dozen. I was on number 10.
I just want to check with the crowd though, because I wanted to leave some time so that we could have a conversation to see if there are other people that might be interested in supporting us to try to save this last 3,200 hectares. I really appreciate the larger context in which you're framing that. But we've got this room until 9 o'clock, so I would really like it if we could have a bit of more of a conversation about the report.
Can I just have one summary and then I'm done?
So, sure, what do people think? Well, I mean, so you guys are happy just to allow Fred to continue? You don't finish his point?
Okay, yeah, so one more thing to say, that was my summary, and I really guess we're close to home now. One of the things we need too in British Columbia, and there are people who have talked about this forest resource tenure reform, right? And everybody says, oh yeah, we're going to do it. The government had a bill to kind of do it quasi, and the people and the NGOs just fought against them like crazy. And I wrote a letter to them, only 4 pages long, so yeah, I think it's a great idea, but you need to go through the whole land use strategy again, because on the landscape, where are you going to have the parks, where's the timber going to be, and redo that because times have changed for beetles and social things, etc. And so my scheme, my proposal has been to the ministry, 50% should be held by companies, and it should be all in tree farms, all area-based. Way better than volume-based. 50% should be divided up amongst the people. Those resources belong to you, so let's let you manage them. And the best form of tenure is a community forest, which no Midway and Greenwood got one, but it's way too small. I think to be counted by. You need to be big, 200,000 or 300,000 cubic meters. In fact, in our area, I think 300 would just fit, and then we could say goodbye to BCTS. That's what their AAC is. And why not let you people here in this room, in the boundary area, manage the area that BCTS has? Because then the trees will stay here. You will lose absolutely no jobs. You may even create more jobs. Hopefully we will have a little better management. Your mandate will not be to make money certainly have to make money, but that's not your big mandate. Your mandate is to look after sustainable resource management. So that's tenure reform. And that is also something that I think is a very timely political issue. And people have been working on that for a long, long time. And the Liberal government has said we're going to do it. And then they have gone on and made all kinds of tenure changes that makes it even more complicated and even harder to change. And they go on and on and on, piecemealing it to death. And so I would like to see that thing redone again. And also the U.S., we suffer here, the mills suffer under 15% countervail duty. It's off right now because we're over the threshold. As soon as the lumber drops down, then they get beat down further because they have to pay that countervail duty to the U.S. And the reason we do that is because the U.S. the big companies here in Canada, BC especially, have too much control over the timber. And they actually do. They control about 75% of the timber. Okay? So the U.S. is not without cause. And they said, reduce it to 50, and we'll go away. I'm saying, let's do it. Everybody wins. And the company says, well, we need those trees. I said, well, they're up to the ground. You can have them. Just buy them. Right? And I'll roll them. And there's all kinds of advantage to that. Then they're on to go to this. They don't have to talk to people like Roy or Dieter or Margaret. They don't have to worry about it. They don't have to worry about streams. They don't have to worry about fire. They don't have to worry about silviculture. They don't have to worry about water. They don't have to worry about anything. I'll do that, or you can do that. And you can sell them the logs, and then they will say, well, gee, we only want these logs. Well, that's fine. I'll sell you those, and I'll sell mine somewhere else. Over here, like that.
And, I think it would be better if you don't sell logs and if you produce something out of it.
Okay, I'm not a sawmiller. I sell my logs, and I'll tell you one thing we have here in Canada, and in BC, we have some of the best sawmills in the world. Absolutely, we are good at what we do. Companies like Interfor and Klesnikov.
Raw logs.
No, I didn't say anything about exporting. I'm selling them to the local mills. Keep the jobs local. Let's have another here. You bet. Thank you. Amen. Amen.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate Fred and Roy for all the information. I'm sorry I kind of cut you guys off. I just wanted to provide some opportunity if anybody has any questions or any comments they'd like to make. And if not, I'm sure we can find, maybe encourage Fred to get up and speak some more. So we have a petition that's circulating. If you're interested in signing that, we'd really appreciate your help. We also have, Marion, would you mind grabbing that? There's a what do you call it, clipboard at the back. If you're interested in providing your name and email address and phone number, sure, just maybe circulate it. If anybody's interested in getting involved with the friends and residents of the North Fork and helping us save Lynch Creek North, we'd be happy to have your contact information and get in touch with you. So I don't know, I mean, you've kind of heard of where things are with us, and I don't know if you have any suggestions about other actions that we can take. We were thinking maybe of organizing a hike. There's a 5-kilometer route trail in the Lynch Creek area, and I'm not sure how many people have been there to walk that, but that's one thing we thought we could do is organize a hike. And if we can get more people out there to see the area, I think that you'll be impressed with the forest that's there right now and the size of some of the timber.
What's the current action plan? Like, we've heard what's happened so far, but is there a current action plan? Like, what are the next steps that you've thought of?
What we've done so far is gone as far as we can in the bureaucratic level, so up to the deputy minister of the ministry. Unfortunately, right now the writ's been dropped, so there's not much that we can do politically. Previously, we have been in touch with the former Minister of Forest Lands and Natural Resources and the former Minister of the Environment, but they haven't responded. They no longer have any power. So, and it's going to take a while, regardless of which party wins the election. Until the cabinet is chosen, we're not going to have anyone to specifically direct our concerns to.
Well, I think it's an opportune moment right now to invite some of those people on the high.
Yeah.
And you know, right now you need to put the pressure
Yeah.
before they get in.
And we appreciate, yeah, everybody's help in talking to the candidates and helping us, we're a small group of people, helping us raise awareness of what's at stake. But yes, I think it is an opportune time.
We do to write a form letter and distribute it so that everybody can send a letter to.
Margaret, we tried to get the NDP candidate here tonight, but unfortunately he's in the, over in the Okanagan, because Adrian Dix is in the Okanagan tomorrow. So he couldn't come here, but he is going to meet with you. Sam is on the 8th, when he comes here to Grand Forks, which will be his last visit here. But I just want to say one thing else. The problem I see is happening that there is no trust between forest companies and the people here. I mean, there's just absolutely no trust at all. When I go up the Christian Valley and I look up at what is called goat skin, it's been completely gone. It's beard. And then I come back here and see you people fighting for what we're trying to fight back here. We better fight damn hard. And I will assure you that Rob Fleming will be the next minister of the environment. Okay. Now you know where I stand.
Margaret, just an interesting thought here. There has been a group of retired Forest Service employees. I know it's at least 2 years in the making, extremely bitter for what's happened to the BP forest. And I'm sure that should you get an NDP government, they're going to have a lot to say. For us, we the people, it'd be interesting to see what that group of people is thinking in terms of forest management.
Which group of people, sorry?
Well, these are retired and I guess downsized employees, Ministry of Forest. I was brought to my attention when I had one of the district managers, Larry Pace, walking the open grassland park with me. And hell, that's good 2 years ago. So they have an agenda. They know from their perspective as Forest Service employees what should be happening.
Yeah, thanks, Dick.
Margaret, I suggest you write another strong letter to Dave Peterson, the new assistant deputy minister, or deputy minister is Forest, Dave Peterson, and ask him to hold this BCTS sale in abeyance, at least until after the election, and then they can proceed, because if they sell it within the next 2 weeks and start advertising anything, you're locked in regardless. It's pretty hard to back off from that stage. So you're getting close to the point of no return, regardless of how many sit-ins or, petitions that you may have. Yeah, the next thing would be a sit-in, and you need to put on some weight.
Do you know how they're intending to harvest the logs? Do you know how they're planning to do it? Like, what are they planning to do on these cut logs?
Do you mean clear cutting or not?
Well, are they clear cutting?
That's what I've been told.
Because it doesn't look, all the pictures that you took, it does not look like the kind of a place for you.
Well, there is Ponderosa pine, and then they said they won't cut those because there's no interest in them.
Yeah.
But everything else will.
What was the actual prescription, like how much are they leaving behind?
Well, that's one of the, right from the beginning, we were asking for their final plans. And it just get pushed off. We still don't have it.
So you don't know what the actual site plan
No, because they
And they don't even have to disclose it to us either. Right?
I don't.
That's well, basically,
They're going to show us the site plans?
well, only once it's basically decided. Like there's no, they could tell us earlier, but we, as the public, have no opportunity to change that as far as they're concerned, right?
Especially once you get far down the way. I'm surprised, first of all, that they wouldn't have a public meeting. You know, I mean, this is our timber, right? This is our
They didn't have a public meeting.
No, they never did have a public meeting because they didn't want people to come in there and have their say, which is not it should be handled, right? No, I mean, it shouldn't be. I mean, that's secret and overpowering you and battling you with whatever.
Well, initially it was, if you want to see it, drive to Nelson.
Yeah, and the second thing is, they should definitely tell you how they're going to harvest here, like Doug was saying, they're going to be clear cut, selective cut, you know, what percentage are they going to leave, or where do they leave, how much seed free patches, or wheat, wildlife free patches are going to be left, and repairing reserve zones, old growth management areas, aesthetics, all water, how are those other things going to be protected, and they all should be addressed in their site plan. They have to be, by law. And there's no reason that shouldn't be public. We should get a law resource.
But what they're saying, just one comment, and then there. What they're saying is that right now they're drafting up the specs for the tender call for what they're calling road upgrading of the old Gladstone Road. And they're going to put that out to tender. They're not actually going to put the cut blocks up for auction until later this summer, later this year. So they're still working on those site plans.
Okay.
And they have told Dave Tellerico and others, I think, that there'll be an opportunity for us to look at those site plans. And so then I think that would address the question that you
Yeah, I'm thinking that if they're going to go ahead with the harvesting one way or the other, you still might have some influence at this point prior to them putting it up for bid, even if they're bound and determined to go ahead with it.
As far as the retention strategy goes, and what sort of trees you could leave, like the smaller trees and patches of trees, so that you have some residual stand structure, and it's not a clear cut, which you quite often will find a logical pine stand. You'll clear cut it and start the whole thing over again. But in a stand like that, there's lots of opportunity for retention to retain that vertical structure, for screening, and for wildlife. So there's probably lots of opportunity for input at this time.
I did write a letter to DCTS and I received a response from, I think it was Ingrid Russell, and I found it extremely difficult to understand what was in the response, because although I love the trees, I really have no concept of what is sustainable, what is not. We have these resources, I think it can be done, but I'm unsure of how to respond to Ingrid. And so I dropped it because I've got a family and I'm busy and I really don't know even know how to understand it. So people like Fred are valuable people in our community, and we need to have more discussions. I could have listened to for 3 hours and not got bored. So I'm hoping that we'll have more people to help us understand what the letters we are getting back. Because I think yes, it's just like, yay, Christina didn't get it. You know, there's no dialogue coming back. Well, she must be okay with it, but I'm not. But I don't know how to respond.
Well, it's pretty technical stuff. It's different language.
It is.
If you're in the industry, you know it, but if you don't, it is.
Right, and it could be something that could be very valid, and I understand that. And then other parts of it, I just don't feel they're right, but I don't know how to respond in a sound way.
You know, it's not a personal letter. I mean, it's all page 23, you know, is adaptable to this question. And that's what they said. It's not like they're going to respond to your particular question.
So if we brought the letter in and went over it, it'd probably be the same letter everybody's going to get.
Yeah.
So it might be worth doing, is going through it with the fine tooth comb and respond to it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Sorry, I don't remember your name. Yes. Jamie? So do you have some suggestions as to what we could do so that, because you're exactly right, like we're coding and stuff, and the tables that they're presenting to us, we don't know how to interpret.
Ideally, it'd be nice if you get the planning forester out there and he could take you out to the site and tell you what they're going to do in layman's terms. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, they can say, well, we have a codominant retention strategy. Well, it means nothing to you. But if you go in there and say, well, we're going to leave this kind of diameter class of this species, that's something you guys can probably understand. You may not be satisfied with the fact you're already anchored there, but looking at those stands and knowing that area is likely to go to winter range, which means that there's likely legislative requirements to retain snow intercept, big trees.
There are actually, I know that there is, you know, they're on some of the upper ones at least.
Yeah.
And I think you have an opportunity, I think that, like say the access is a big concern, you probably have some opportunity to say, look, we want some kind of road strategy here, like a deactivation strategy or gates, or I mean, it's been done other places. We still have gates where there's no vehicle access you know, not allowed anyway, not supposed to be there. I know the Grandy Wilderness Society did some good work and fixed the one up again on Lake and put this new sign up. I mean, we've got areas like that that they're legislated, and I know I've run into people like working up there that they didn't know, there's no sign. You know, how would they know? There's a sign at 50 kilometer in Fishing Valley, and they're 30 kilometers up the Bush Road, driving the road, and they go across the bridge and they break the law. They don't know.
That's the point why it doesn't work.
It doesn't work because no one puts a sign up there, Barrett.
You know, granted, I've offered many times, I paid for the signs, but that doesn't work in the bureaucratic world. So
I know.
We want road access, of course, that's our number one priority, but getting road access, I mean, that's like trying to get a burn. I mean, that's retarded to try and beat. I know you're with me, but the point is, this is the beginning of the end. We're talking about these small blocks. That's nothing what in the 5-year, 10-year plan is in Lynch Creek. I mean, that's the problem. We're looking at these, and I don't like to talk much because I'm so cynical, I get negative, but if you look, you know, even in the presentation, if you're talking to BC Timber Sales and saying that, look how beautiful this is, and it's been previously logged. I mean, that's an oxymoron. It doesn't work. That's not a very good presentation to BC Timber Sales because it is nice and it is beautiful and it has been logged. So, but we have to try and stop this small issue at the moment because they're going all the way right through. I usually at Cannon Creek, so.
And I just wanted to add, you know, I don't know how a public domain like that can be taken out of the people's hands and just kind of
Hand it over to them.
just take it. It's just taken. Nobody asks any questions. They do whatever they want. And I mean, you wouldn't turn your backyard into something like that. Why would you do that to a beautiful place like that? I mean, we all need to speak up. It's just gotten out of hand.
But you're assuming that it's going to be a clear cut like those pictures taken in mountain pine beetle sands, and it's not going to be that way.
I know, but listen, honestly, you wouldn't put big machinery into your backyard, would you? Big machinery destroys. In Europe, they use selective logging. It's got to change.
So I just want to make one comment about there not being any trust between the public and big industry. Well, you know, we have 3 or 4 people here. We are big industry. We're just here to listen and to get input and to be respectful, not to come in here and, you know, bully our way around. So we just came to listen on our own time. We're not here working. We came as individuals. We all live in the community. We're just working people like you in a different field. And we're just trying to get an understanding of what the issues are. And you know, I think it would be helpful, not for everybody, but if there was a small group of people that wanted to see some of our harvesting that isn't clear-cut harvesting, maybe that could give you some ammunition to go to BCTS and say, could you do something like this? Here's an example of harvesting that we think we could live with. What do you think?
Yeah, but that has been all done before. I mean, we had the meetings with BCTS. We had a lot of meetings, not a lot. We had 2-3 meetings with BCTS, and we suggested different methods just for that area. I mean, they're going to do logging in the Miller Creek area. They're going to do logging in the Pathfinder area. And we said, okay, it's the Lynch North. That's a different area. We don't want to have that little area touched out of the reasons we have been talking about this whole evening.
But it's just that compromise.
It's not that we are against logging in general. Miller Creek, they will be logging the next few years. Sure.
But is there compromise between the clear-cut logging, which I'm sure they're not proposing, and true selective logging where only 1 out of 10 trees get cut? Is there a compromise where BCTS and the local residents can come together and say, okay, this is something in between what we both want?
And there was no compromise on that.
No, we asked for, and they didn't go one step
They didn't
towards
go
us.
into that at all.
I think though that, I mean, there's an offer that's being made to us to go and take a look at what Interport has done in some areas that could potentially be an alternative. Because one of the things that we have been saying really strongly in the beginning is there's an opportunity here to do this a different way. And my understanding, I mean, I have been told directly that they're planning to clear cut. Like BCTS has directly told me that. They're not planning on doing selective logging. So,
well, that's what I'm saying. There may be a compromise between, it could be a lingo problem. There may be a compromise between selective logging and the clear-cut pictures that you put up there that everyone could be happy with. Because you can have a clear-cut by definition in forestry terms that has a ton of retention, like a lot of leaf trees. Like if you take out 60% of the trees, Doug, isn't that still by definition a clear-cut?
If it's in patches,
Yeah.
it's over a hectare. So there's lots of definitions.
But am I wrong? And didn't I understand that then the wildlife would be still in danger? Like, you can't go in there and log and expect the animals to still be there in any way, shape, or form. Aren't we expecting, don't we want to extend that park area so that we don't lose those animals?
There's a balance for wildlife and for forestry activities. It's not all one or the other. You can have forestry and healthy wildlife populations as long as it's done in a sustainable manner. And there's some thought at a higher level as to how the animals can move around. And I'm not a biologist by any stretch, but there is a balance between a clear-cut field and selective logging. Sure.
How much of the Lynch Creek North area is expected to be affected by beetle kill?
I think very little. Like, I guess the going concern here, and hopefully that's a highlight for most people tonight, is this particular corridor is more valuable because of the linkages or the connections between the parks, right? So this is not to be treated as another piece of the boundary countries forest, right? Hopefully people are getting that basically, I guess I've met with BC Timber Sales, unfortunately not on this specific area because we never had any public consultations, but they're very good at listening. That if you read between the lines in their comments, they don't have to do anything. Basically, they need to come and listen, but they don't legislate. Like, there's nothing that the public can do to force their way one hand or another. They might be nice and say, okay, we agree with what you're doing here, therefore we'll accept A, B, and C, but really they don't have to do anything, right? They can continue on as they planned even before they listen to the neighbors, the residents, the biologists, doesn't really matter who it is, right? They've been given a mandate. But the highlight for tonight, hopefully, is that corridor is more valuable, right? Roy spoke to that in extreme, I guess, for the wildlife part, and that's why, right? So basically, even, I guess, BC Timber Sales, we should be pushing them so that basically they recognize that even, I guess, 60% cutting, right? Even though it's technically clear cutting or not clear cutting or whatever it is, in that specific area, that zone, that corridor that the wildlife will use, isn't acceptable. We're not saying you can't log the rest of the boundary that way. It's that corridor that we're trying to focus on. That's the battle that we're trying to
It's the road building and all
Eventually
that.
for an extension of the park boundary then, or?
No, I guess ultimately, but we want a focus battle here, right? I mean, if we make the issue too big, like Fred's fighting a much bigger battle, and clearly he's put in a lot of years. Like, it just sounds astounding in terms of the passion and the effort that's gone into it, right? But really, what we need to be pushing is BC Timber Sales, not this area in this fashion, and building the roads, even if it's just the roads, building the roads is going to have the impact that Roy is talking about, right?
So when you
So
build
we are
roads,
looking to extend the park area, I mean, in a sense, that's what we're looking for.
Well, we want a special decision in this area because of that. As soon as we mention to them we want to extend the park area, they're going to be like, well, that's out of our jurisdiction, it's got nothing to do with us, right? So that's I think what we're after. That's the essence of it.
and the thing is, once you build a road, then you have all kinds of pressure on wildlife, as you were mentioning. All hunters, ATV people, when just people driving.
See, I know this area quite well. I've walked it quite a number of times and quite thoroughly and across the creek and that. And it's already roaded, which means that, and wherever you have a trail and you can get a quad into, it's got access, right? So building a road in there almost makes it less attractive, perhaps. You might have less traffic because they can't go there with a quad where vehicles can't go. So it's already roaded. I think that those cuts, those blocks that are proposed are probably some of the last ones down there on the bottom that are easy to get at. I can't see, I know that the rest of that area up there now between the park and the river is really difficult to get at. You have to build a road across rock for kilometer and a half to get to it. And I'm not sure that the BC timber sales would even want to harvest up on top of the ridge. So, I don't
But
know.
we need to make sure if that's the case.
I'm thinking, for these 3 blocks, if you could get some concession on how they're going to log it and let them go with it, I don't see that you would have much trouble with them wanting to harvest anything else in there for the indefinite.
No, actually, she said that they might go
Is that right?
further up.
Well, they could still cross the creek. They could cross Lynch Creek. There's wood up there on the east side.
Yeah, it's not the
She
east
said
side we're worried about. It's going further up the old Gladstone Road because there's timber up there, old growth timber apparently close to the park.
Yeah.
But just, I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong about that, but that's what I've been told. But just one point on the road, like the old Gladstone Road now, I mean, you saw that one photograph, there's a photograph of it on the back here. I mean, it's sort of a pretty overgrown trail really right now. Once it's upgraded so that it's safe for logging trucks to travel down, I don't know if it has to be wide enough so 2 trucks can pass each other, but it's going to be like a much different imposition on the landscape than this narrow road is right now. I can't get up there with my pickup truck right now. You know, so once it's upgraded, there's going to be more pickup trucks going up there, maybe hauling campers or whatever. It's going to be open to like a whole different set of motorized traffic than what's available right now. So, I mean, the concern is more motorized traffic, more contact potentially with the grizzly bears, and more threats to that grizzly bear population.
You know, it's quite a popular camping spot down there at the bottom of Lynch Creek, and everybody's got a quad nowadays. And I'd be surprised if there was any less traffic if you built it on it or updated it.
Any more traffic, you're saying?
Yeah.
I don't think there'd be more. That's a risk though, isn't it? And what if there is? I mean, Roy's already quite clear that the grizzly bear population is already less than 100, which is what it needs to be for sustainability if there's
And
any
an upgraded road is going to last that much longer into the future, right?
Well, look at the road that's there now, that would have been put in 100 years ago and it's still there. So,
Really?
100 years ago.
Well, 50 to
80 years, whatever the
It's
number is.
about 60 years.
But every tree that blows down, down to more, right?
Firewood, I guess, is the problem there.
I think we haven't spoken about the people, you know. There are so many people, we all who are engaged, we love this area, we go there so often. This is our recreational area. And of course, wildlife is very important, but it's also for the people. And there's nothing left then. I mean, it's so close to residents, it's so close to residents. And without car you can go there. And there's a trail made from the people. And with love and a lot of work and it will all be destroyed. And where can the people go anymore?
Yeah.
You know, I have an anecdotal story here. My boy is 17, he's in Switzerland on a Rotary Exchange, and he loved it. He's coming back in 8 weeks, and he says, Dad, first thing I'm going to do is go for a week in a bush at the camp. He says, in Switzerland, there's no such thing as they call park and forest, but it's all overrun with people. You know, so we have something that we don't realize, the value of. Me too, when I came to Canada 45 years ago or whatnot, I couldn't stand it, you know. I mean, I just started making money and to go back to Europe. And after 2 weeks, I realized how beautiful Canada is.
It's the best move you ever made in your life.
Exactly. Yeah, and since then I've traveled the world over, but Canada is home to me.
The other thing.
And so this is what it's difficult to translate to people who only worry about money. Because money is not that important, you know. We need the air, we need the food, and we need the water. You know, and so we need to raise the consciousness a little bit. You know, we need to worry about where we are and the environment we live in, and preserve it.
But I don't think it's mutually exclusive. You know, you can still harvest wood, you can still log,
Yes, you
and
can
still
go with
have.
horses and harvest it, but don't go huge horses and make a huge impact on the environment.
We'll go back to logging with horses if you start using horses to travel back and forth.
Well, I think what he's getting at is what Fred's doing. Wood lots.
Well, the other thing that he did say about Switzerland was that whenever he told them there were bears in Canada, they were amazed. There are no bears in Switzerland. They're gone.
No, they are coming back.
They're coming back now, but they're working hard to bring them back.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, because basically they're gone. They have to bring them back in.
The quality of life.
Emphasize again what Elizabeth said and what Fred pointed out earlier. It's not just the timber value of the forest, what we're talking about at Lynch and everywhere else. There's so much more value in the forest than just the timber value. And at Lynch Creek, it's not just our backyard, it's a backyard of everybody here in the whole boundary. It's the closest wilderness area in the whole area. I mean, you're gonna have to travel 80 kilometers to the Granby on rough roads, or you'd have to go into Gladstone by boat or hike into it to get into a wilderness area. Then this Lynch Creek area right now is still hikeable and accessible for a lot of people who can't afford to go any further than that. So why taking this out? Why taking these 7 blocks? Why is that so important to take those 7 blocks and destroy the last little piece of wilderness we still got in our closest area we have? I mean, everybody wants to go and see that and walk it, and a lot of people want to walk.
And Dieter, that brings, to speaking about mismanagement, because they are in people's backyards now. It's because there's not much left anywhere else. And that is mismanagement. If you don't regrow your forests, I mean, there's not much left out there. So,
Isn't that how we got started? Well, from what I remember, we got started because a neighbor, a friend of ours, has a family, and they were coming very close to his boundary on his property, and it was making us nervous. We were talking about big machinery near the creek that they get gravity water from, and they wanted to make sure it was going to be done properly and to regulations, and we started asking questions, and it just got to be bigger and bigger. And I thought, well, that just could be volcanic soon. Like it could, we happen to have a lot of private lots up there, but it could be my water system and my family threatened. So I will stand up for, my neighbor's children and his family and them wanting to live up there. And they do it in a very, you speak about riding the horses and you'll do the logging. I've started committing to riding my bike into town, go see me up and down the North Fork. And it's not been my style, to date, but I'm willing to do with a little less so that I moved up here from Vancouver, from the edge of downtown, to be where there's trees and wilderness, and I can look out and potentially see a cougar or a wolf or a grizzly bear. And I was a little bit sad when I moved here that there just isn't a lot of wildlife, and I really am willing to do with less and pay more for the lumber if it's done in a very sustainable way.
So you're willing to take up that challenge with bicycles and logging?
With everybody, if everyone's on it, I might be looking for a job, but.
I hear a lot of people here who have a lot of good things, but I kind of guess I have to be devil's advocate and say, so beauty, quality of life in your backyard, recreational opportunities for people who live here, these are all pretty much intangible things to the people who actually have the power to make the decisions to affect how this all works out. The people who don't live here, the people who are elected, the people who are in Victoria, the people who actually have to deal with dollars and cents. These are intangible things. Beauty, I'm sorry, it doesn't fit into the equation. You have to figure out how to make these things tangible to those people so they can actually feel them in a sense that they can take them part of the equation. I mean, when he talked about how many actual bears you need to have a sustainable population over time, that's a number. You can hit them with that number. If you can show them how what they're doing is impacting that number and making it not possible, that's something you can hit them with. But I'm sorry,
you may think it's beautiful, but beauty does not have a quantity attached to it.
I disagree, Les, because Clayquot was a place of beauty and the world realized it and they stopped a lot of what.
Yeah, but I'm saying is you have to figure out how to make that felt in the halls of power and decision.
Yeah, but isn't it said on the license plate? Beautiful BC, where is it?
Yeah, but that's advertising language. But in the positions those people hold, and the, like he said, the debt that we have is growing debt, that is just advertising language. Like you said, BC Timber Sales only has to give you lip service. They don't have to actually do anything.
I'm living 1 creek lower down from Lynch on Miller Creek.
Yeah.
And they're gonna log in there, and we looked at the cut blocks they've been proposing in that area, and we asked them, could you extend that amount in the Miller Creek area to cover those 7 cut blocks at Lynch? They wouldn't lose any money.
Yeah, but get rid of the goddamn BC liberals and you may get a home run.
There's actually, I just wanted to mention one point. I mean, so the way governments work, to our discredit sometimes, you can look federal to some extent, is they change things small piece by small piece, right? When you look at this map, you've probably got, I don't know, that's probably like 30% logging in terms of the last however many years, right? So basically, when they propose new cut blocks like this, it looks like there's small changes, right? A lot of people, and I understand whether you're in forestry or not, it's like, well, what difference does it make? It's just this small cut block here, this small cut block. We have to look at the big picture of what the forest was originally before humans got involved. And then say, based on that, how does the current proposed cut blocks look, right? It's not based on where we're currently at. Is it okay if we take these extra X hectares, right?
And that was another thing the forest practice were criticized the government on. They had no way to measure or consider the cumulative impacts on the landscape.
Or the tipping point, right?
A huge, big gap.
So we have to step back from that. And I understand it's jobs, and it's jobs way beyond forestry, right? Those jobs are related and intertwined with other jobs. So I'm all for what Fred was saying in terms of the real sustainability. People who've done it and have been successful at it, but really us looking after, or the citizens of BC looking after our own lands, right?
And I would submit that the reason that Clayquot actually succeeded as an effort to protect that was because people were able to translate that into a currency that politicians understood, votes. I mean, really, that's what it came down to. If you can make them look like crap in front of the voting public, they'll listen to you. They'll do what you want, or they'll at least consider it. But if you can't do that, then they'll just give you lip service.
Yeah. We
That's
did have
why
Rob
we do this
Fleming come
evening
up.
here.
Rob Fleming came up and some other, Margie Basso, unfortunately we lost all these people that actually took a look at the, up there. John Slater was up there, but then, the Liberals kicked him out. So I don't, maybe he was in support of us, but he didn't really know how to help. And so, yeah, we need to get more people hiking up that direction or maybe more pictures to show them
And
what
you
it's
need to
like.
have Victoria listen to it, not some MLA who's from here, who's a backbencher. I mean, really, if you can't get the provincial and the national media on your side covering it, then you're not going to get much traction in Victoria, no matter how many little MLAs you get on your side. That's all I have to point out.
So you're proposing like brainstorming up other ways of showing the area and its beauty and our.
Yeah, guerrilla marketing in a sense, Anywhere on YouTube.
Okay, tangible next step. Let's have that community hike. Let's invite different groups and
Well, Fred also
and
mentioned,
the media and let's get it on television.
and Fred, you mentioned there's a possible intervention that we could do to hold them while the election's occurring. We should follow up on that.
Yeah, he had a letter to Dave Peterson.
Right.
And the head of BCTS in BC, both of them.
Yeah.
And say, hey, it's not going to kill you to put this off for a couple, 3 months, and nothing is that imminent.
And then the other positive that I heard, I think that was from Doug's, or maybe it was Jamie, saying that because of the slope there and because of the winter snow, And it's possible that there are criteria that BC Timber Sales has overlooked, or maybe they already understand that.
They're like,
So just to make sure that it's enforced.
Right, yeah, the mildew went right, there are definite restrictions in there.
Right. So just to make sure that that is recognized.
Chinese will be mining in
Yeah.
And, hey, Margaret, you gotta put on some weight if you're gonna sit in front of that cat.
I'm gonna call on you.
Oh, yeah.
Pick some place and call it Easter Island.
All right, so thank you, everybody.
Everybody write the board the sergeant.
Yes.
Cat,
oh,
you
yes,
don't have to do it.
slide,
Just
yes.
have to sneak up in the middle of the night
So,
and put
yes,
flapping compound
what
in.
can you do to help sign our petition, which is being circulating? If anybody hasn't had a chance to sign it and want to, it's right here. And somewhere there's a clipboard circulating if you want to put your name on that. And these are the people at BCTS that might be good to telephone or.
Margaret, it doesn't hurt to call up CBC and ask them to come down and do a story on it.
We invited CDC, we did invite CDC, but
Ask them again.
ask them again. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you to
Thank you for all the work.
guys.
What's the little,
Thanks, Margaret.